up. Even though some of you, as really, just thinking as an intelligent person might, you might wonder at some moment when you read all these things, the enormous sums that the government is going to spend, and they're not raising the taxes, even if you didn't put it into words, that they would have to go borrow it. And then the thought would occur to you, like any borrower would, will people lend to me these big sums? So we're going to come to that. But let's assume for the moment, just simply, that it doesn't work. People won't lend. Then they'll print the money. Then we'll have this philosophical debate real practically. And Mr. Obama or some other spokesman for the government will stand up and say to all of us, yes, it's true, we're printing money at a vast scale. But don't worry. And then your argument will be made. There's lots of people who need jobs. There's lots of capacity. Factory space, machines. We can produce more stuff. And if extra money has more stuff, then there won't be an inflation. Then there won't be extra money chasing after too few goods, because the extra money will bring forth the very goods that will undercut any tendency towards inflation. It's as if you and I both want that ice cream cone on the corner. We both want it. But there's only one ice cream cone. And the vendor just has one. And then you and I approach and we look at each other, we look at the vendor, and we realize one of us is going to get that ice cream and one of us isn't, because there's only one and there's two of us. And the ice cream costs $1. You know what's going to happen. One of us is going to say to the vendor, I'll give you $1.50. In the hopes that the vendor, pleased, will give that ice cream to me because I offered $1.50 versus you, who might stick with $1. But you're not a fool. You say, I'll give you $1.75. And that's an inflation as the prices go up of everything, because more money, right? The story presumes that you and I have enough money to bid. If there's more and more money coming in, there's more and more people who can bid. And up will go the prices. So the hope will be that the money somehow gets the vendor so excited that he arranges for more ice cream. Then there won't be a problem. And so there will be a debate in America. This could be something that's headline news 2 months from now, 3 months from now. Those lining up who say extra production is not going to happen and therefore the extra money will make an inflation, versus those who say, no, extra production will happen, we don't have to worry, print the money. And whoever wins that argument, that's what we'll do. And we will all live with the consequences, whatever they are. But we're not there yet, which is why that debate is in the back of the mind. It comes up in a good question, comes up in an unusual news story, very rare. Mostly we're all acting as though we're not at that point yet, so we don't have to worry about it. We can focus on the government borrowing the money. But I'm now going to explain to you what the costs are of the government borrowing the money. I'm no fan of Republicans. I like them about the same as I like the Democrats. So for me, it's different. But pay attention, because the Republicans are saying exactly what, in a sense, they ought to be saying. I mean, the country's in trouble. That's clear. The majority of people feel that way. Obama is trying to bail us out of the situation. There's basically support for that. The Republicans have a tough situation. They lost the election, and now they look like they're, nitpicking at a time when you shouldn't be doing that. It's tough for them. So what they come up with is, however, not altogether nonsense. It isn't. And I hate to be somebody who tells you to take seriously what Republicans say. It hurts my feelings to even think about doing it, but I have no choice. I mean, there is a logic there. If you borrow like crazy to bail the economy out, which is what we're doing, that's what the Congress voted for it, Obama pushed it, he signed it, that's what we're doing. If you borrow a ton of money, you all understand, you're going to have to pay it back. And when the government has to pay it back, it's going to have to eventually tax businesses and people to get the money to pay it back. That's not an argument not to do it, because we're in such terrible trouble. You got to do something. But remember what I said. A solution to a problem is always another problem. That's not a meaning not to do it. If you think you're going to find a solution that produces no problem, good luck to you. It's never been done. You may be the first, but no one else has ever done it. So yes, Obama is doing something. He's going to borrow that money. But when the Republicans say, wait a minute, we're all going to have to pay, that's correct. They're right. Sure, they're right. That's not even the whole problem. If the Republicans were a little smarter in economics, they could say some other things which I'm about to, which are also problems. But that's the one, that's all right. But what they're saying is not without any merit. That's really not the case. And that makes sense. They're going to have to find something if they're going to, hit at Obama, hit at the Democrats, which is what Republicans are there to do. Then they've found something to worry people about. Then they also make other arguments that are a little strange. But if the government is going to borrow for this big stimulus, it has to find lenders. And the first logical question to ask then is, well, who might the lenders be? Let's rule out some. The American people aren't going to lend to the American government because they don't have any money. Most of them have no chance to do that. And so the rich are there. They'll lend some money. But they're not exactly flush these days. And so that's a bit of a problem. Much of the lending that the government has been able to get has been, as you point out in your question, from outside the United States. We've been borrowing now for quite some years. An enormous and growing percentage of the debt of the United States is to foreigners. Foreign individuals, foreign businesses, foreign governments, all of whom, for the reasons you mentioned and many others, lend to the United States government. It is still the government where, if you're a rich capitalist, it's a good place to have your money. And it's often a better place to have your money than the country in which you live and of which you are a citizen, where things are shaky, and it's always good to have a nice apartment on Fifth Avenue, even if no one's ever in it except your cousin Frank, who visits the United States twice a year for a week. If you doubt me, talk to any realtor in New York City, in Manhattan particularly, and you will learn what an immense proportion of the apartments in the pickiest areas of the city are owned by people who are never there. You go in the evening and look on Fifth Avenue, and the windows are all dark. Nobody's in there much of the year. Because these are not homes. These are investments. They are places to put money for safekeeping if you're a wealthy person in Asia, Africa, Latin America, Europe, or anywhere else. It's very important. Anyway, foreigners have been lending to the United States government. So the hope of the Obama administration is that they will continue to do so. That they will continue to do so because we're still the best bet, although we're not quite as secure as we used to be. And they still need the United States not to fall apart because they all sell here in the United States, in these other countries. And if the United States falls apart, they are in a sense shooting themselves in the foot by letting the United States fall apart. So they can't.
It's also reserve currency, so they'll lose all their accumulated wealth.
Yeah, they own a lot of dollars, so if the United States falls apart and the value of the dollar goes with it, they're sitting there holding the stuff. But all of those arguments work two ways. That is, they notice, because they own so many dollars, that there are too many dollars in the world compared to what the United States is worth. And therefore they have to hold more of them, but they don't want to hold more of them. They're a lender who sees the borrower in deeper and deeper trouble. So it becomes prudent to go, well, I don't want him to fall apart, but just in case he falls apart, I don't want him to take me down with him. It's a very old problem. And the rest of the world, you can see it already. Over the last 12 months, the flow of foreign lending to the United States has slowed dramatically. It's changed its form. For example, foreigners have dumped securities. They have dumped long-term debt. They've gone into short-term. They don't trust the United States. They're shifting from, say, a U.S. Treasury, a debt to the a loan to the United States that has to be paid back in 20 years. They've sold that and moved the money instead into something that the government has to pay back in 3 months. Because they want to watch. They want to have the option that if things look terrible, they're not stuck in a long-term loan. They want a short-term loan, which is one of the reasons why short-term debt has changed in America relative to long-term debt. But the most important point, and not the technical points, the big picture. Keep in mind the big picture. The United States is now the world's greatest debtor country. Nobody else is close. Already. The new stimulus is going to make the biggest debtor bigger still. That's not an endless that can't go on. At a certain point, lenders are going to say it's too dangerous to keep accumulating. They won't disaccumulate all at once. That would be crazy. That'll provoke. So they'll all try to do it slowly. They'll all try to bail before everybody gets panicked. But if everybody's doing that, you're going to get the panic. Everyone's going to begin wondering. Everyone is already, I shouldn't make this in the future, it's already here. There are discussions and debates. The Chinese financial officials are making statements now almost every other week, talking about how they're going to slow down the accumulation of American debt, how they're getting nervous about that, how they're moving money into other things, etc., etc. And they are. It's clear. We know enough to know that this is going on. So the Obama administration is about to try to, get the picture, offset the decline in individual spending and business spending by pumping more money in, spending more, and they're going to do it by borrowing money. The hope is they will be able to do it. And not only is this a question of will the money be there, and the answer is we don't know. We really don't know. And the Obama administration does not want to publicly ask the question because it makes the situation worse. If they were to admit that we might not, what kind of panic would then ensue as everybody begins to ask the question, I'm asking you now, what happens if we can't find lenders? Just like if you were desperate in your situation to survive and you needed to find a lender and you had to face the question, what are you going to do in your own personal life if there's no lender to help you? You're going to have to then face choices you're going to have to make you don't want to face about your personal life and your existence and everything else. The United States doesn't want to do that. That's very scary. But even if we can borrow, here's a couple of scenarios to keep in your mind. Maybe the rest of the world will say, yeah, we'll lend to you, but we don't trust you. You're in deep trouble. You're spending like there's no tomorrow. You're borrowing like there's no tomorrow. Your own people may revolt against paying the taxes that will be necessary to repay these loans. Suddenly, the United States will become treated like every other country in which you ask as a foreign investor, not just what the government says and wants, but how secure is the government? At what point will the government run afoul of its own people, and then commitments that are made by the government will not be worth the paper they're printed on, because the mass of people who in the end have to make good on what the government commits won't do it. That doesn't just happen in other places. That's going to happen here too. And the rest of the world is realizing that that's a possibility. That's why the Republicans are important. They're already talking about, no, we're not going to pay the taxes. They're building a tax revolt strategy. They want to be the political beneficiaries of the upset in the American people as the bill for all of this borrowing